For decades, we've accepted a very specific narrative about aging. We've been told it's simply unavoidable decline, a slow, passive collapse of our biological systems over time. You get older, things break down, and that's just the tragic poetry of being human. But modern longevity science is uncovering something extraordinary, something that flips that entire narrative on its head. What if aging isn't just a result of our cells dying? What if instead it's driven by damaged cells that absolutely refuse to die?
That is exactly the paradigm shift we are experiencing right now in molecular biology. We are moving away from the idea of aging as simple wear and tear and looking at it as an active, almost systemic failure of cellular housekeeping. The cells you are referring to, the ones that refuse to die, are called senescent cells, and they are completely changing how we understand the aging process.
I've heard them referred to in the research as zombie cells, which sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, but from a biological standpoint, it feels incredibly accurate. They aren't quite dead, but they certainly aren't functioning the way they should be.
It's a surprisingly perfect nickname. Normally, when a cell becomes damaged, whether through DNA damage, oxidative stress, or just dividing too many times, it has a built-in self-destruct mechanism. It's supposed to quietly exit the stage to make room for healthy tissue. But senescent cells stop functioning properly, they stop dividing, and yet they remain metabolically active. They just sit there in the tissue, lingering.
And if they were just taking up space, that would be one thing. But they aren't just sitting there quietly, are they? They are actively causing problems for the neighborhood.
Precisely. And that is the core of the issue. These zombie cells release a constant stream of inflammatory chemicals into the surrounding tissue. In the scientific community, we call this the SASP, the senescence-associated secretory phenotype. It's essentially a toxic cocktail of inflammatory molecules. This signaling damages the surrounding healthy tissue and completely disrupts cellular communication.
So, one dysfunctional cell can essentially corrupt the healthy cells around it. It's almost like a biological contagion. You have this localized inflammation that starts spreading, turning a small issue into a systemic crisis.
That contagion analogy is spot on. Researchers are increasingly associating this localized accumulation of senescent cells with a whole cascade of systemic issues. We are talking about widespread inflammation, physical frailty, metabolic dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, and even neurodegeneration. When you look at an aging body, what you are often seeing is cellular clutter that the immune system has failed to clear out.
Which brings up a fascinating evolutionary question. Why would our bodies even have this mechanism? If it's so destructive, it seems like a massive design flaw.
It does seem counterintuitive, but senescence actually evolved as a protective mechanism. When a cell experiences severe DNA damage, you absolutely do not want it to keep dividing. If it does, that rapid, uncontrolled division is exactly how cancer forms. So, cellular senescence is the body's emergency brake. In small amounts, and in a young, healthy body, this process is highly protective. The immune system comes in, clears out the senescent cell, and the tissue heals.
But as we get older, that cleanup crew gets sluggish. The emergency brake gets pulled, but the damaged car just stays in the middle of the highway, blocking traffic and causing pileups. Cells that were designed for our protection eventually become our greatest biological liabilities.
Exactly. The problem isn't the senescence itself, it's the chronic accumulation of these cells over decades. And this ties directly into a concept that is dominating longevity research right now: inflammaging. It refers to the chronic, low-grade inflammatory state that seems to underpin almost all age-related diseases.
Inflammaging, it's such a descriptive term. It suggests that aging and inflammation are so tightly woven together that they are essentially the same process.
They are inextricably linked. Senescent cells are one of the primary drivers of this inflammaging environment. This constant, low-level alarm bell of inflammation gradually degrades blood vessels, brain tissue, muscles, joints, and metabolic function. The body is spending so much energy dealing with this inflammatory noise that it slowly loses its regenerative efficiency.
So, if aging is partly a manifestation of this accumulated inflammatory burden, and zombie cells are the ones pulling the fire alarm, the logical next step is figuring out how to shut the alarm off. How do we get these cells to finally exit the stage?
That question has led to one of the most exciting and heavily funded areas in longevity science today, Senolytics.
Senolytics, the targeted assessments of the cellular world. Let's break down exactly what these are because this feels like the absolute frontier of molecular medicine.
It truly is. Senolytics are a class of compounds specifically designed to identify, target, and eliminate senescent cells without harming the surrounding healthy cells. The underlying philosophy here is remarkably elegant. Instead of just trying to suppress the inflammation with traditional drugs or merely slowing down the biological damage, we are aiming to remove the root cause entirely.
It's like running a deep diagnostic on a computer and permanently deleting corrupted files from the biological software rather than just restarting the machine and hoping for the best.
An excellent way to visualize it. And the data we are seeing, particularly in animal models, is nothing short of fascinating. When researchers use Senolytics to clear these cells in aging models, we don't just see a halt in decline. We see improvements in physical performance, restored metabolic health, and even significant lifespan extension. The tissues actually begin to function as if they were younger.
That is staggering because it implies that the decay isn't a one-way street. If you remove the interference, the body still knows how to be healthy. The blueprint is still there.
Precisely. The regenerative capacity of the body is still present, it's just being suppressed by the inflammatory noise. This is particularly crucial when we look at highly sensitive organs. The brain and the heart, for instance, are deeply affected by inflammatory aging processes. Researchers are intensely investigating how senescent cell accumulation drives cardiovascular disease, osteoarthritis, tissue fibrosis, and neurodegenerative conditions.
It paints a picture where the future of aging science isn't about finding a magical fountain of youth, but rather focusing on maintaining meticulous tissue cleanliness at the cellular level. But before we talk about pharmaceutical interventions, doesn't the human body already possess natural cleanup systems? We didn't evolve entirely defenseless against this clutter.
Absolutely not. The body has incredibly sophisticated natural senolytic pathways, processes like autophagy, where cells literally eat their own damaged components to recycle them, are constantly at work. We also have immune surveillance, where specific immune cells hunt down and destroy senescent cells.
But I imagine our modern environment throws a wrench into those natural systems.
It does. Things like chronic stress, poor sleep, environmental toxins, and constant caloric intake without breaks all impair these regenerative mechanisms. This is why interventions like fasting, high-intensity exercise, and controlled metabolic stress are so powerful. They essentially force the body to activate its biological housekeeping protocols. A healthy biology is one that is constantly repairing and removing damaged components.
So longevity isn't just about what we add to our bodies, the supplements, the compounds. It's heavily dependent on how well we support our body's innate ability to take out the trash.
Very much so. But there is an important caveat here. While the science of natural housekeeping and emerging senolytic compounds is thrilling, the field is still in its early, evolving stages. Human biology is extraordinarily complex, far more intricate than isolated cellular models.
Right? We have to ground this in reality. We aren't talking about immortality fantasies here. This isn't about entirely escaping the human condition.
Exactly. That is a vital distinction. While the results are promising, many of these targeted therapies remain highly experimental. Researchers are carefully investigating safety profiles, the precise timing of when to administer these compounds, optimal dosages, and the long-term outcomes. If you clear out too many cells too quickly or at the wrong time, you could theoretically impair tissue repair, since a tiny amount of temporary senescence is actually needed for acute wound healing.
It's a delicate biological tightrope. The goal is responsible interpretation and application of the science, aiming for healthier biological aging, not necessarily trying to live to be 1,000 years old.
Beautifully stated. The objective is health span, maximizing the number of years we live with vitality, clear cognition, and physical strength. And this brings us to the broader future of molecular longevity. I believe we are approaching a time where medicine will increasingly focus on biological age rather than chronological age.
Meaning the number of candles on your birthday cake becomes irrelevant. What matters is the epigenetic clock, the inflammatory biomarkers, the state of your mitochondria, and your cellular resilience.
Exactly. Emerging technologies and AI-guided longevity medicine are making it possible to track these metrics with incredible precision. The future of healthcare will likely involve highly personalized longevity strategies designed to maintain tissue vitality over a lifetime. We are moving from reactive medicine waiting for a disease to appear to proactive cellular maintenance. Aging is becoming an increasingly modifiable condition.
It fundamentally changes how we view our own existence. Perhaps aging was never simply about time passing. Perhaps the clock ticking is just an illusion, and what we are really experiencing is a reflection of how efficiently the body maintains itself at the microscopic level.
I think that is the most profound takeaway. The future of longevity will not depend on escaping our biology. It will depend on understanding it deeply enough to restore balance from within. Because true vitality doesn't start at the level of the organ or even the tissue. It begins at the molecular scale.
A powerful thought to leave our listeners with today. The ability to reverse systemic decay might just be hiding in the very cells we are trying to clear away. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the architecture of our biology.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Until next time, keep questioning the nature of time, and remember, longevity begins with cellular cleanup.